Welcome back to the Banderpod, the mysterious and mythopoeic podcast of Bandersnatch Books. We're a small press publisher of treasures found off the beaten path, for lovers of all that is good, true, and beautiful. I'm SDG Morgan, and today I'm your host for another season-ending readings episode. And in honor of our opening of pre-orders for our cozy mystery novel, Not to Be, by Katie Ladney Mitchell, we're focusing on all things mystery. First, Katie will read the opening chapter of her upcoming novel. Then Annie Beth Donahue will share the first chapter of her middle grade mystery, No Clues You Lose. And then we will share a whole treasure trove of mystery recommendations for you from all our guests this season, so you have some new books to read throughout the spring, into the summer, and beyond.
Not to Be by Catherine Ladney Mitchell. Chapter 1. Squinting into the beam of light, Kathy Waters watched the silhouetted figure stagger across the hardwood and clutch his throat. He spluttered, a small cloud that swirled with dust specks, before dissolving into darkness beyond the spotlight. Finally, after one last sidestep, he leaned perilously forward and collapsed to the floor. The thud echoed through the vaulted room. Kathy pursed her lips and inhaled audibly through her nose. How many times will it take for this man to die? That was terrible, Director Frank shouted from the theater seats. He slapped the master script onto the folding table in front of the first row. They'd been rehearsing Hamlet's death scene for the last 25 minutes, and though Chet's Cadsley had majored in theater and even toured with a professional Atlanta troupe right after college, the cocky thespian could never execute a realistic death on stage. Frank put a hairy hand on his hip. Chet, the only thing more tragic than Hamlet's death itself is your blasted performance of it. You're supposed to be poisoned, not hacking up a lung. And loosen up your feint before you break an elbow. The audience isn't paying for your trip to the hospital. The exasperated director took a swig of his Diet Dr. Pepper and wiped both chins. Now once more, from Oh, I Die. The actors on stage groaned as Chet got back to his feet, dusted off his doublet, and stomped back to his place while the squeaky spotlight zigzagged to catch up with him. Off stage, behind the black velvet curtain, Kathy sank slowly onto a metal chair. What she wouldn't give to be curled up on her couch with a steaming cup of masala chai. Masala chai, smart wool socks, and my favorite flannel pajamas. She tried in vain to take a deep breath. The corset underneath her ivory Ophelia dress squeezed her sides like a boa constrictor. She huffed. Dress rehearsals were always stressful. People's fuses ran short and tempers flared easily. Everyone felt on edge as they stuffed themselves into uncomfortable costumes, layer-caked their makeup, and realized they had less than 24 hours to memorize anything they'd hitherto neglected. And Frank always held the cast hostage until satisfied their performance could justify ticket sales. Kathy untoggled her brown leather purse hanging from the back of her seat and fingered through its contents for her phone. She checked the time and winced. 10:25 p.m. Unless rehearsal wrapped up soon, she'd have to type like a jackhammer to make her 1 a.m. deadline. If she didn't, her Chattanooga line editor would sentence her to writing obituaries till Christmas. Her stomach tensed involuntarily at the thought. As Chet's silhouetted form made its way downstage once more, Kathy smiled ruefully as she remembered her therapist's advice. Focus on your interests, he'd said. It will relieve your anxiety, he'd said, and help you move on. So, for the last 2 years, Kathy had been trying to move on. She'd started writing a novel and joined the local theater company. For the first 3 shows, she'd starred in roles like townsperson number 4, principal understudy, and chorus member. But in Hamlet, she'd finally reached center stage. Memorizing lines had come easily. She'd always had a knack with words and could recount entire conversations verbatim, an invaluable skill for a journalist. But even the thrill of playing Ophelia could not entirely make her forget, and she always kept her anti-anxiety medication close by. Despite her therapist's recommendation, The theater was doing little to relieve her stress level at the moment. Built in the 1920s and rescued from demolition in the 1960s, the historic Chattanooga Tivoli Theater had undergone several renovations to preserve its high-ceilinged, heavily gilt grandeur, and it was due for another renovation soon. Outside, a red and white tower of flashing lights announced the latest theatrical, cinematic, and symphony offerings. Inside, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, iron candelabras, intricate molding, crimson carpets, and French flourishes on the walls welcomed all showgoers into a whole new world glittering with magic. It was the closest most local folks would ever get to Versailles. But life backstage was a different universe entirely, comprised of average stars, gas giants full of hot air, and a couple black holes. Compounding the actors' frustration was the building's HVAC system, which had recently become decidedly bipolar. Turn on the air and everyone froze. Turn up the heat and everyone sweltered. Due to the late October chilliness, the janitor must have recently adjusted the thermostat, transforming the backstage area into a sauna. Kathy cringed as a bead of sweat trailed down her spine. Hopefully it wouldn't stain her delicate organza. She peeled her russet locks from her neck, retrieved an elastic band from her brown leather purse, and secured her hair into a messy bun before reaching behind her back in an effort to loosen her laces. 3 tries later, she rose from her seat in search of assistance. This corset feels like a straitjacket. I'll never untie this knot by myself. Before she reached the green room, however, the stage manager accosted her with clipboard in hand. "Kathy," Leanne asked in a hushed tone, "have you seen the janitor? He was vacuuming in the aisles earlier. Why?" The slender woman pinched her mouth into a frown. "Somebody spilled paint in the men's dressing room, but no one's claiming responsibility. It looks like someone got stabbed in there." Kathy nodded toward the actors downstage. "If Chet doesn't nail this final scene, he might be next," she whispered. "How many run-throughs are we up to?" Leanne asked as she wiped her damp forehead with the back of her slender hand. 4. Whack! The 2 women craned their necks for Frank's verdict. "Again!" The velvet curtains muffled his shout. "Make that 5 and counting," Kathy sighed. Leanne pressed the clip of her board up and down in rapid succession. "After 3 months, you'd think he'd be able to die decently by now. This isn't even his first Shakespearean tragedy." "Maybe he's afraid of landing the wrong way," Kathy whispered. "Didn't he get a black eye back in Romeo and Juliet?" Leanne's own eyes narrowed to slits. Not from dying on stage. She checked her smartwatch. "If this rehearsal isn't over in 20 minutes, I'm leaving. I have work in the morning. Work with benefits." At that moment, the music to "If I Were a Rich Man" started blaring from Kathy's vibrating purse. Her eyes jumped to her hairline. "Turn that thing off," Leanne hissed. "They'll hear you on stage." Kathy fumbled through old receipts, emergency tampons, and business cards she'd never referenced before reaching her phone. It was her sister. "I'll call her back," Kathy thought with a frown as she swiped down on her screen. "Sorry, I thought I'd silenced it." "Keep it quiet, or keep it in the dressing room," Leanne pointed at the guilty gadget with her clipboard before marching off to find the janitor. Kathy turned again toward the green room door where she hoped to find some help loosening her corset when Richard, her Shakespearean character's father who died earlier in the play, walked up to her shaking his head. Kathy cringed. Any interaction with Richard usually cost her more time than she cared to spare, for Richard was a generous man who always gave his opinions free of charge. "This is so typical of Chet," he grumbled with a raspy voice. The middle-aged Polonius had been fighting a cold all week and wore a towel soaked with vapor rub around his bearded neck. First, his cosmetic surgery puts the show schedule back a week. Now his elbows drag out dress rehearsal. It's criminal how Frank puts up with it. If you can't die with dignity, you shouldn't be Hamlet, or Laertes, or Claudius, or practically anyone in this play. You should stick to musicals and leave Shakespeare to the adults." He loosened his damp shirt. It was a wonder his eyes weren't bright red from his medicinal collar. "And his mother's almost as bad as he is," Richard added. actually banning so much as a Reese's cup from backstage for his sake? I bet they're just making up his allergy as some sort of power play. He wasn't allergic last year, or the year before. Kathy's eyes stung from the menthol fumes wafting from Richard's unacknowledged reminder to use his voice sparingly. She cleared her throat. I agree Chet didn't need the nose job, but it is possible to develop an allergy later in life. My cousin never had a problem with milk until she turned 30. Ah, 30. Richard's blue eyes looked wistful. That's when I played Hamlet. If Chet really knew anything about acting, he'd protect his voice, stop yelling at Frank, and stop drinking all that carbonated water. During the last scene, he sounds more like a smoker with emphysema than a poisoned prince, Richard's own voice buzzed. Distilled water is best. You really gotta wet your whistle if you want to gasp correctly. I should know, because I gotta keep my own vocal cords moist this time of year and talk only when absolutely necessary. Kathy nodded politely, smiled to herself at the man's incongruence, and took a small step backward so the pungent vapor rub wouldn't suffocate her. Now, when I played Hamlet back in 2004, Richard droned on for another 2 minutes while Kathy glanced downstage and sadly tugged at the laces behind her back. The actors were nearing Chet's death again. Perhaps he'd get it right and Frank would release the cast. And here we are, Richard continued, unabated, hot, bothered, and up till practically midnight. And to top it all off, Leanne threatened to start locking the dressing rooms during the run if the petty theft doesn't stop. Can you believe it? Whatever happened to common decency? It's enough to make me lose my faith in humanity. I am really getting too old for this. I should be home in bed, resting my voice. Thwack! The sound of Chet hitting the stage, followed by his rather loud expletive, brought Kathy and Richard from behind the curtain to watch whether the director would accept Chet's latest death. Frank shook his head. Chet! We've gone over this 1,000,000 times. You need to loosen up. I'll show you once more. Then we're running curtain call. He lumbered on stage with Diet Dr. Pepper still in hand. Everyone stepped back to give their director a wide berth. Frank handed his soda to the understudy, brought his heels together, then rolled down onto the hardwood stage like a graceful sea lion. The cast clapped. See, Frank said, propping his head on his elbow, I'm not asking you to do the impossible. It's really not that hard. Yes, the hardest part for you is getting up, Chet spat from beneath his chiseled cheekbones. Frank's face went habanero red. You're lucky the audience finds your pretty face so amusing, but don't think it's irreplaceable. He hoisted himself up from the floor and snatched his soda from the understudy on his way off stage. Now try again. No! Chet stood akimbo. I'm not doing this anymore. My elbow's black and blue already. You want me to wear skater pads under my shirt? Frank turned and scrunched his Diet Dr. Pepper can between his meaty fingers. This scene has been blocked the same way since auditions. I'm not changing my stage directions right before opening night. Then maybe you should use the understudy tomorrow, Chet threatened as he crossed his well-toned arms. Let's see how well he does the death scene, considering he's never said more than 2 lines without checking the script. The understudy, a skinny college student, grew pale under his suit of armor and looked as though he might faint. Maybe he could be Chet's stunt double, Kathy thought to herself. You won't follow stage directions? Then let me give you directions to the door. There it is, Frank pointed off stage. But if you walk out, I will never cast you in another show with this company. Everyone looked at Chet. Oh, Frank, Chet said with a patronizing grin. You know you can't open without me. Just change the blocking and I won't walk out. Everyone gazed at Frank. The director glanced at his phone and cursed. Take 5, everybody, but I want you all back on stage no later than 10:39 p.m. to run curtain call. He grabbed a new can of Diet Dr. Pepper from a cooler in the front row of theater seats and headed toward the lobby, barking at the janitor about a soda stain on his way out. Chet puffed out his chest, leaped off the stage, and strutted toward Frank's folding table in front of the orchestra pit. He snatched the master script, flipped through its pages, and hefted himself back on stage. Kathy swallowed hard as he made a beeline for her. She didn't mind Chet's Bambi brown eyes and admirable physique. She just didn't care for all his drama beyond the curtain. He always sought the spotlight, even when off stage, and never cared who he offended as long as he got attention. When the understudy once asked Frank why he let Chet call so many shots, Frank had merely shrugged and said, "Showbiz is, after all, a business, and ticket sales speak louder than Southern hospitality." In other words, Kathy frowned as Chet closed the gap between them, Chet can get away with murder as long as people keep filling the theater. "Hey, babe," Chet addressed all females with this title. "Got a pen? Oh, never mind. There's one on the prop table. By the way, I'm glad to see your dress finally fits. Did Wilma let it out for you?" Kathy blinked. She couldn't think of a reply, polite or otherwise. Thankfully, Chet turned toward the prop table, sparing Kathy the burden of a response. He uncapped the pen and started marking up Frank's script. "Chet, what in tarnation are you doing?" Richard rasped. "You can't change the director's script. It's private property." "I'm saving Frank the trouble of correcting his stage directions," he continued editing, then stopped mid-stroke as he studied two narrow papers tucked within the pages. Then he gave a low whistle. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Kathy glanced toward the theater lobby door Frank had taken. "Chet, seriously, put the script back. Frank can make his own notes." "Oh, he's made some notes all right. Would you like to see?" He offered the open script to her. "No, thanks." Kathy held up her hands in refusal. She had a keen distaste for smut. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself," Richard said, his bushy salt and pepper eyebrows meeting over his nose, "getting all mixed up in other people's business." "Welcome to the South," Chet sneered. "And if anyone in this theater should be ashamed, it's Frank." "Hey, Chet," cooed Chandra, the svelte set crew girl, from the backstage door leading to the dressing rooms. "Come here a sec. I gotta show you something." Chet grinned roguishly at the others. Duty calls. He tucked the narrow papers into his doublet and tossed the script to Richard. "Put this back for me, will you?" Without waiting for an answer, Chet strode toward the black-clad stagehand and disappeared behind the door. "Just typical," Richard fumed, nearly crumpling Frank's master script. Fearful he might launch into another tirade against Chet, Kathy took the opportunity to take her own exit. "Excuse me, Richard," she said. "I need to change. This costume is killing me, and I have to leave as soon as rehearsal ends. I've got lots of writing to do tonight." "On your novel?" Kathy smiled wanly. At this point, her novel was little more than an outline with a few roughly sketched scenes. "I have an article due for the paper." Richard stepped aside and gestured toward the dressing rooms. "I suppose Frank won't mind if you're not in costume for curtain call. As for me, I always stay in full costume for the full duration of dress rehearsal. Don't want to put a jinx on opening night." "The only person jinxing the show is Chet," Kathy said, "unless he learns how to die on stage without turning Hamlet into a comedy."
Thanks, Katie, for sharing Chapter 1 with us. Sounds like Chet may not be long for this world, and if you want to know who, how, and why, pre-order to find out. Now, Annie Beth Donahue will share from her middle grade mystery, No Clues You Lose, about a girls' wheelchair basketball team whose entire season threatens to be undone if they can't find out who stole all their mandatory uniforms for the big game. I'll let Annie Beth take it from here.
Monday, November 5th, 3:45 p.m. Josephine Jacobs, put on your shoes. Mom was yelling at me about footwear again. Apparently, it's a big deal to leave the house without shoes on, like it's socially unacceptable to most people, but not to me. I hate shoes. "I can't find them." I was still changing my clothes for basketball practice. "They're not in the bathroom." "Did you look in your bedroom?" Mom was getting louder, coming down the hall. "Yes." I was adjusting my sock seam perfectly across my toes when I saw what I thought was Mom's head pop around the corner of the doorway. I say thought because she's only 4 feet 11 inches, so I always have to look closely to see if it's her or my 10-year-old sister, Emma, who has the same dark hair. "Are you seriously still getting ready?" Mom squinted at me. She thinks it's a scary squint, but it's not. "We are already late for practice. You don't have your shoes on, and you've had 30 minutes to get ready." "I'm almost done, but I have to use the bathroom, too." Mom's eyes got big. "Joey, do you care about being on time?" We would be almost on time, maybe 5 minutes late, which is basically early for our family. But I didn't care about finding my shoes. They were a pain to put on, even when I wasn't wearing my orthotics, and they felt weird because I only have partial feeling in my feet. I was kind of hoping we would leave without them. "And you're not leaving the house without your shoes. You would just have to miss practice. Coach Mike is cracking down on the rules. He wants you to practice how you play. You can't play a tournament without shoes, so you can't roll up to practice without shoes." "Okay, I'll find them. Wherever they are, I'm sure they're together." I tucked my number 1 necklace under the neckline of my shirt. You can't play a tournament in jewelry either. Mom held up a black orthotic tennis shoe with a zipper that ran all the way around the side. "I've already found one. It was in the laundry room." Mom crossed her arms. "I don't even want to know why. How my children manage to constantly have a shoe by the front door and a shoe missing is beyond me." "If it makes you feel any better, I don't want to know either. I thought I left them both by the door, so it's really weird that you found it in the laundry room. Like, who has been wearing my shoes on their dirty feet?" I smiled and started to shut the bathroom door. "Since you have to finish getting ready, I'm going to ask Matt to help you find your other shoe." "Not Matt. Anybody but Matt. He'll actually find it." "Don't bother Matt. It's fine. I'll just put on my socks with the fake ballet slippers printed on them, and no one will ever know." I was talking from behind the closed door, shuffling my bathroom medical supplies around. I have a habit of opening packages and leaving the wrapper in the bin, which means it's sometimes hard to find a new pack. Kind of like trying to dig the keys out of your mom's purse when it's full of tissues. "What did you need help with?" Matt's voice was outside the bathroom door. He must have overheard us talking from his room. Matt is 12, super smart, and always in my business. "We're running late and need to find Joey's shoe." "Shoes?" Matt asked. "No, shoe. I already have one," Mom said. "Did you check her room?" "Don't go in my room," I yelled from inside the bathroom. "Pretty sure it would be in her room," Matt said. I was stuck in the middle of my bathroom routine, so I couldn't go stop him. "Don't you dare go in my room. It's not in there." I was feeling panicky. My room is honestly a hot mess of ADHD-style organization. I may have shoved a couple too many important things I wanted to save into reused holiday bags. It's not like Matt could do anything to make it worse, but I still didn't want him touching my stuff. "If you don't want him in your room, then why don't you give us a suggestion as to where to look?" Mom's voice was getting sharp. I'm thinking." I straightened my clothes, hurrying to get back out into the hall. "Come, Daisy," I quietly said to my service dog, who was lying on the floor. That was it. "Hey, Mom." I opened the door. "Let Daisy sniff it." My younger brother, Brandon, is 9 now and doesn't wander away as much. But when he was younger, he wandered a lot. Enough that we cross-trained my service dog to go find him. And I'm sure my shoe smells a lot more than a person does. Mom held the shoe to Daisy's nose and gave a command. Daisy sniffed the shoe, lifted her nose to the air, then took off running toward the living room. I pushed past Mom and Matt and wheeled down the hall after her. I felt like a real canine police detective. Daisy ran through the living room and into the kitchen. She stopped in front of the refrigerator. Woof, woof. Her nose was turned up and her eyes were locked on the top of the fridge. "Found it!" I yelled. Actually, I hadn't quite found it because I couldn't see it. The top of the fridge was not exactly accessible. I took my forearm crutches off the back of my wheelchair and leaned forward. It was hard to get my feet planted on the floor without braces or shoes. I stabilized the back of my legs against the frame of my wheelchair and stood up, placing all my weight on the left crutch while I lifted the right one to swipe around the edge of the fridge. I felt the tip of the crutch come in contact with something, so I looked up and gave it a shove. A fly swatter fell on my face. "You want me to get that for you?" Matt was behind me. "No, I found it. I'm going to get it." I swiped around the edge again. "Can you actually see it up there?" "Yeah, it's closer to the back." I scooted over a few inches and swiped the corner near the back wall. I tapped something solid again. This time the object felt a little heavier. "You want me to?" "No, I've got it." I hit the object hard. Matt watched it tumble off like it was the most normal thing in the world for a shoe to be retrieved from the top of a kitchen appliance. And to be honest, for our family, it was.
To finally learn who stole the uniforms and why, just go to our website, bandersnatchbooks.com, and order a copy of No Clues You Lose. And now we will end with some mystery recommendations to bolster your TBR list. And I will be the first one to start. My favorite mystery is G.K. Chesterton's metaphysical spy thriller mystery comedy, The Man Who Was Thursday. It's about a happy-go-lucky bumbling poet who accidentally falls into a conspiratorial ring of spies so secret they don't even know each other's names. Instead, they all refer to each other by their code names, the days of the week, and none of them knows anything about their shadowy overlord, a man who goes only by the code name Sunday. Next up, Kelly Belmonte. She shares her favorite mystery and why.
I love mysteries. This is kind of a tough question to pick just one. So mainly because I love so many of them and I read them all the time. So I couldn't, and also because I like to read a whole series of mystery stories, and picking just one out seems unfair. but I'm picking one. So The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love it because there's follow-up books to it. So, I get greedy. If I like an author, I want more than one. Uh-huh. But I think Richard Osman does a really good job developing the characters in that first book in the series. And he continues that throughout, but particularly in that book. And it's just really fun. It's a fun read.
Ned Bustard, what's your favorite mystery story and why?
Well, my favorite mystery story used to be A Murder's Announced. Like that was the first murder mystery that I read as like a young person, and I really understood. Like, I was reading it on my own. I mean, I grew up. My dad was always reading Sherlock Holmes, so I knew about mystery stories, and I'd watched BBC mysteries. But that was the one that really got me, and I was like, oh, I love. And then I read all of Agatha Christie's murder mysteries and such. But right now, I think my favorite is The Thursday Murder Club. I just think that they're fantastic. I think my favorite is the second one, The Man Who Died Twice, but you have to read the first one first. But then they deal with some big ideas in there too. It's not just whodunit, but the four characters are all folks who are living in a retirement community, and they solve murders on Thursdays. But it's just fantastic. Yeah, that's my favorite.
Oh, that's a great one. Mark Forrester, what is your favorite mystery story and why?
My favorite mystery story is The Blue Cross. It's a short story from the Father Brown series by G.K Chesterton. I really love the story. It's got everything you need for a mystery and a fantastic turn right at the end. And it's the nature of the turn that I think is just so delightful and it just gets me every time. Should I say what that is, or?
We'll leave it for the reader or the listener to find their own copy, but that's in the Father Brown stories by G.K. Chesterton.
Indeed.
The blue,
The Blue Cross.
See, everybody, you can just do a short story to start if you aren't into mysteries yet.
Jonny Jimison, what is your favorite mystery?
My favorite mystery is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle, which is probably cheating because it's a collection of short stories. But I like that you can feel that these were just punchy little short story mysteries that were published in a magazine and then collected in a book. And I don't think Sherlock Holmes gets any better than in these short stories. There's some fun, quirky stuff like the Red-Headed League and some kind of creepy horror stuff like the Speckled Band, and there's even a Christmas story in there. So I like that there's a collection of everything and none of the stories linger on or overstay their welcome.
Librarian Laura, what is your favorite mystery story and why?
I am immediately going to cheat on my answer and give 2 favorite mystery stories because I'm a children's librarian, but also a grown-up reader, and so I have to have one of each.
Okay.
My favorite grown-up mystery story is The Beekeeper's Apprentice by Laurie R. King, which is the first in a series of books about Sherlock Holmes in his, quote, retired years. He's not actually retired. And his upper teenage apprentice who sort of comes into his life and reminds him about how fun it is to solve mysteries. So that one's The Beekeeper's Apprentice. And then my favorite middle grade mystery story is Chasing Vermeer. And it is an art heist mystery with sort of math elements in it. And it's so much fun. That's my answer.
Ben Palpant, what's your favorite mystery story and why?
Okay, I'm going to go outside the box on this one and say that it is Winnie the Pooh. Both of those volumes are mystery stories. And
yes,
truth be told, I think any good piece of fiction has mystery elements to it. So I think Pooh Bear is one of the great detectives, and of course he's got all of his helpers to lead him to the right place.
I love that.
I think the what's the second volume of that?
The House at Pooh Corner.
House at Pooh Corner. The House at Pooh Corner has one of the great endings of literature, in my opinion. It's so endearing and beautiful, and it's unfortunate that when I say Winnie the Pooh, millions of people immediately go to the Disney cartoon version because it's just not the same.
No,
It's not
the book
same.
is so much better.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So that's my number one mystery novel right there, House at Pooh Corner.
All right, Graeme Pitman, what is your favorite mystery story and why?
My favorite mystery story is a very popular one that I don't know if anybody has already mentioned or not, but it is Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. So we've got a mysterious island. We've got mysterious invitations. We have mysterious deaths. I think it's considered maybe, if not her best, one of her top ones out of the 80 or so that she wrote. And it is my favorite one.
All right, so Ken Priebe, what is your favorite mystery?
My favorite mystery, technically mysteries plural, but it's called The Mysteries of Harris Burdick by Chris van Allsburg. So this was a book that was introduced to me by my 5th grade teacher, who introduced our whole class to the art of Chris van Allsburg, he's more well known for writing the original book of Jumanji and The Polar Express, which were both turned into movies, but they were books first. But in the 80s, he also did this book called The Mysteries of Harris Burdick. And the concept behind it is that it's a series of illustrations where there's an illustration and just one sentence of a story. And there's nothing beyond that. So the idea is that these are a collection of drawings that were discovered by a mysterious man named Harris Burdick, and nobody knows why he created these images, where the images come from. There's only like a little snippet of a story. So the idea is that you can come up with the rest of the story yourself. And actually, my elementary school teacher used the book as a way for us to come up with our own story to go with the picture.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Actually.
Rachel S. Donahue, what is your favorite mystery story and why?
Can I have 2 answers?
I suppose I'll allow it.
My first favorite were the Happy Hollister books as a kid. I mean, and I read those very early, and that kind of sparked my love for the mystery genre. My current favorite is Murder Must Advertise, because I had never read the Lord Peter Wimsey books until I met you, Carrie. And at your advice, I have been reading them, and Murder Must Advertise was so much fun.
It is very, very fun. And I think what boggles my mind about that is that Dorothy Sayers wrote that one real fast because she was on a publishing deadline and she wasn't done with the 9 Tailors and needed time to do more research. And so just whipped out Murder Must Advertise.
All right, Carolyn Claire Givens, what is your favorite mystery story and why?
I have one obvious answer, and then as soon as I say that one, I'm like, oh, but what about? So I'm going to say another one before my obvious answer. So Agatha Christie has, of course, many famous detectives that are well known, and I love many of their stories. Hercule Poirot, Miss Marple, Tommy and Tuppence, all amazing. But she also has a ton of standalone books that my favorite of her books, I think almost across the board, is called The Man in the Brown Suit. It's sort of that mystery adventure kind of story, and it's so great. But then I must mention Gaudy Night by Dorothy L. Sayers, which is one of the Lord Peter Wimsey novels. And if you have read my bio on bandersnatchbooks.com, you know my cat is named Lord Peter Wimsey. And Gaudy Night is really a Harriet Vane mystery that Lord Peter just sort of comes in as a consultant on. And it is, I tell people, it is a polemic for women's higher education in the guise of a mystery novel. Sayers does an incredible job of telling you the story of, you know, what essentially a poison pen at a women's college at Oxford, and the intricacies of the culture. So that one is up there.
Oh, love it.
A.B. Donahue, what is your favorite mystery story and why?
One of my favorite mysteries is Sleeping Murder by Agatha Christie. It's the last chapter in the Miss Marple series, and it has some amazing plot twists.
Finally, listener, what's your favorite mystery book? If we didn't mention it, then join Bandersnatch Books on our Substack page for this episode and leave a comment telling us your favorite mystery and why. Or you could give us a like on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, or wherever you get your podcasts, and tell us there what is your favorite mystery and why. Well, until next season, may you find mysteriously engaging bookish treasures in your wanderings off the beaten path. Thanks for listening in to our conversation today on the Banderpod. We hope you'll check out our full catalog at bandersnatchbooks.com. The Banderpod is produced by Rachel S. Donahue, A.B. Donahue, and Carolyn Claire Givens. Audio engineering by SDG Morgan. Artwork by Evelyn Warnamundi. Many thanks to our friend Chris Slayton of Son of Laughter for our theme song, Cricket in a Jar. Find links and more in the show notes.